Well, good evening and welcome to the Caswell Cooke Show. We're a few minutes late, but that's because technology sometimes gets in the way. But we don't care, right? Because we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube and we're whatever other place you're watching us. So thanks for tuning in tonight. We're on the Caswell Cooke Show Facebook page. We're on my YouTube page. We're on the Musqueamicut Beach Facebook page, which there's about 120,000 of you out there on that page. We're on the Westerly Living page, all kinds of stuff. So it's a lot of great stuff going on. And we have a little scroll at the bottom about an event that's coming up in a few weeks that we're going to be broadcasting live as well, a little luau. But tonight we have a really great guest. And I've known him for a few years, for several years. I don't even know how long. And he's definitely come and interview some of the people that we've had play at the beach. He's a music guy long before he was a TV guy. So it's my pleasure to bring our guest on tonight, R.J Heim from Channel 10. R.J, how are you?
Hey, all right. Now your microphone's a little scratchy.
Uh-oh. Is it scratchy? Is it scratchy if it's scratchy to Ben, the producer, he'll come on screen and correct me.
Yeah, it's like crackling and popping. We were having some IT issues on this end here, because we were supposed to start at 8, and now we're kind of getting rolling at 8:08. If that happened at Channel 10, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing this is just the internet.
Right.
Which is why now, RJ, first thing I want you to talk about before we get into your illustrious career is I want you to talk about Music Through the Tunnel of Time and tell me what this project is.
Well, what this project is, I started in radio before I get into TV. When I was 17 years old, I got lucky, got into a top 40 radio station in South Central Pennsylvania. It was near the high school. I did a story about the fact that it was the first 50,000 watt FM in the area to turn off the elevator music and to put on top 40. Back in the day, back then, I guess I'm dating myself, all the music stations were on AM, and the FM was just like this elevator music that they would play. So as a result, that was later on in the career, but I was even skinnier then. But that was at FM 97 in Lancaster, PA. So I had a big career in radio before I got into TV. But everyone said, if you want a job in TV, because there's no money in radio, go to Temple University in Philadelphia. It was a state school because I was a Pennsylvania resident, and study radio, TV, film, journalism, the whole 9 yards, and you'll be a shoo-in for a job in TV. So I worked the radio job in the 98 YCR. That was the first station. Then I got picked up other stations, WTTM in Trenton, WSSJ in Camden, while I was going to Temple University in Philly. Then I was spinning records as a mobile DJ for parties to pay my way through college, So I've always loved music. I've loved music since I was a kid. And so it's just a natural extension that as I got into TV, I would still always love the music. I have music playing in the car, at home all the time, buying music, then the internet came along and we get iTunes. And then I started listening to Apple TV, right? It's at the bottom. That's at the very bottom, radio. And you click on there and there's thousands of stations around the world that are doing internet radio. So I'd pick one and I'd listen to it for a couple days. And I was like, man, they're playing the same stuff over and over and over again. And it's not fun. So I got this bright idea. I said, well, I can do better than that. So I bought the Sam Broadcaster Pro software. I bought the computer just before the pandemic began. And thank God I did, because it gave me, as soon as the pandemic hit and turned all of our lives upside down, it gave me something to pour myself into outside of my working at Channel 10 hours. But let me tell you, however long you think something's going to take and however easy you think it's going to be, multiply that times 10. But the end result is what I just put on the air officially as of New Year's Eve, Music Through the Tunnel of Time. I figured, well, okay, I grew up listening to top 40 radio like 92 Pro FM up here, but it was WFIL and WABC out of New York. At nighttime, you could pick up WLS in Chicago, WKBW. So my radio station is an homage to those kinds of radio stations. However, those were current at the time. They didn't play many oldies, right? But Now we're 60 years later, from when those stations started in the 1960s and 70s, throughout the 80s. Some of them are still chugging along, but how do I do that? So I came up with the idea that it'd be the best of all genres and all eras, with jingles and reverb and fun in between. And you see, I have a microphone here. I can go live anytime I want.
That's pretty
So,
cool. And it's
yeah.
it's 24 hours a day.
24/7, and if I'm home when I'm here, I just may say, "Oh, I think I want to talk," So I'll just, it's on right now, right? So
This is Backstage with RJ, ladies and gentlemen. This is how he's doing the radio these days.
well, but I love, I love radio. I've always said I love radio better than TV, but there's no money in it, and unless you're like Howard Stern or something, you're not going to be a success. I mean, I worked, so let's see, after college, there was no jobs in TV, so I had to go back to radio, and I went to FM 97 in Lancaster. That's the picture you saw there of all 120 pounds of me with a mustache. But that was a 50,000 watt FM, and they had me do the overnight shift.
Can I just for a second though, RJ?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that mustache?
Well, I grew it, so I looked like I wanted to look older.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, so I grew a mustache, and I looked like a kid who grew a mustache to look older. So that lasted through my first and second jobs in TV. So I did manage to get a TV job in Pennsylvania. It was at Channel 51 in Reading, Pennsylvania. 2 hours a day, minimum wage.
Wow.
And I was told to keep my unemployment from the other radio job that I had gotten fired from in Harrisburg, which was the second radio job after FM 97 in Lancaster.
Now, let's stop there because you and I share something in common. I used to work for WERI, AM 1230 in Westerly, which the station's gone now. But it was the only job in my life that I was ever fired from. Because it was right when things went automatic, and I went in to show somebody how the station worked, and the liners were one off from the song. So when Elton John came on, it would say that was Rod Stewart, and it was all day until he noticed it. So he fired me for it, which is too bad. But what was the reason you got fired? Can I ask?
Well, let's see. I don't know if that's for broadcast. I didn't do anything wrong.
Oh, good.
If we were to advance it to today, I probably would have had a good sexual harassment lawsuit going.
It wasn't the mustache though.
No. That's from FM 97 too. I did this so on the overnight shift at FM 97 before I went to the job in Harrisburg. The boss said, it was a top 40 station. The boss said, come up with something fun, interesting, creative. The bars close at 2 a.m. There's overnight shift workers that end at 2 a.m. So do something fun. So, Don Imus had the Reverend Billy Saul Harkis, and, you could hear these radio reverends, real ones, and parodies of them. So I figured, all right, I'll come up with the Reverend Bob. You see, RJ is Robert John, so I figured Reverend Bob. And I don't know where the material came from, but people would call in with questions for the Reverend Bob, and then I'd sketch out some notes, and then I would go into the studio and record these 3-minute bits, and adding gasping oohs and ahs and claps in the background, and boys and girls, you've been sinning bad, haven't you? People would call in with questions and say, ask Reverend Bob why firemen have long hoses. There was always these like double entendres, and
yes.
It was fun, but I didn't want to make my career as a comedian. And the frightening thing was that started to take off. It started to click. So the opportunity came. I was supposed to go from the overnight shift to a midday shift at FM 97 in Lancaster. The reason why I left there was because the Reverend Bob thing, the boss really loved it on overnights. So he passed me over and hired someone else to do middays. And I was like, hey, man, that wasn't the deal. So I quit, even though I was under contract, went to WFEC, Fire 14, hot hits, jingles between every record, big reverb, to do middays. And they gave me a living room and doubled my salary.
Wow.
Living room furniture, right? The long story. That's all going to be in the book after my parents are gone. But I'll divulge. I'll divulge the full story then.
But then then somehow you ended up in Florida, right?
Well, yeah. So I'm at that radio job in Harrisburg. It sounded like WFIL. It sounded like WABC. So that was a dream come true. But that job only lasted 6 months. But I had met a guy who left. He was an engineer at a TV station in Reading, Pennsylvania, Channel 51, that was going to. Yeah, I'm kind of cut off there on the right half, but that's the only picture I had left. That was my first job in TV. But that job lasted an hour, a year and a half, and the station was broke. That's why it was 2 hours a day minimum wage, keep my unemployment, and then they put me on the CETA program for migrant workers because the station had no money. They didn't have a budget. They had a weatherman. But I told that guy who was an engineer at the TV station who left to come work for the radio in Harrisburg, he says, RJ, I think they're going to try to put an hour-long newscast on one more time. I said, I'm putting on my suit, and you're driving me out there tomorrow. We're going to drive out there together. You're going to introduce me to everybody. And he did. And I schmoozed my way into a full-time job. But, it was cobbling together the CETA program, the unemployment, and 2 hours a day minimum wage. But I had my first job in TV.
And right? Did you like going from radio to TV? I mean, because then people would, once you go on TV, people in the area start to actually recognize you, right?
Well, yeah, and that was difficult. That was difficult. Not so much at the first TV job because it was Lancaster or Reading, Pennsylvania. Not many people were watching it. But I worked real hard. They weren't fixing any of the equipment because the station was broke. It was going to go dark. So, I mean, I was making audition tapes from like the first time I was there, making dubs, and then the machines didn't start to work very well. And I'm like, oh my God. But I was doing weather too. We didn't have chroma key. We had a magnetic board, where it was just magnets of high pressure, low pressure. And I did my best Jim O'Brien impersonation. And he was a huge personality in Philadelphia TV at what was then WFIL TV, Channel 6. And he was my mentor. He didn't know it, but he became my mentor because I would watch him growing up, first, second, third grade, and then he became a disc jockey on WFIL radio on the weekends. Okay. So, no, he was doing the TV on the weekends and disc jockey Monday through Friday. So he made the transition, and I was like, I want to be him. I told my parents in third grade I want to be him.
Wow. So, and you did. So now tell us, let's go to the weather for a minute because you've won 2 Emmys.
Yeah.
And you've been at NBC 10 for what? Since 90 what?
93. So it'll be 28 years in March.
Wow, that's a good amount of time, I tell you. So what was it like to win an Emmy Award? I mean, come on.
It was shocking. I hadn't expected it, but the category was for outstanding weathercaster in New England. Now, at the time, they've changed the rules since then, but at the time, you could take snippets of your weather reporting out in the snow, fun features, but it all had to be weather related to be put on this composite. And I sent that in. But most of the other weather people who sent in their stuff just showed them doing a 3-minute weathercast, which was kind of boring.
Boring, right.
So mine stood out. It was outstanding, right, compared to the other guys and gals. And I got it 2 years in a row. Then they changed the rules.
Now, listen, my brother-in-law he works for DEM in Rhode Island, but he also is a meteorologist. His name is Darren Austin, but he never did the TV thing. But he says that a lot of these terms that we've heard in recent years that we never used to hear, like bomb cyclone, bombogenic, these huge words. I don't remember as a kid back in 1987 hearing my local weather person use those terms. He said those terms have been around a long time. Now, when did news start using these, huge terms that have been like, key words lately?
I don't know. I think what happened was before the proliferation of cable TV, when people only had 3 or 4 TV stations to choose from, ABC, NBC, CBS, and an independent station, that was it. right? So everything was pretty staid, and it wasn't, too crazy and everything ratcheting up. But along came, the Weather Channel and more competition. So they're doing more in-depth explanations, isobars, and when the isobars are packed tighter together, it means the wind is more increasing. So it was kind of an education for the audiences to say, okay, there's more terms out there. Now we still try to just make the weather relatable to the people at home. But when you get a term like, the storm's going to bomb out, it's really based on the word bombogenesis, right? So I guess the Weather Channel made it okay to say bombogenesis in a weather forecast.
In polar vortex, somebody just typed in.
Right, polar vortex. Yeah. Would we have used that before? No, probably not. We've explained it in the past just to say, a massive, an air mass, a cold Arctic air mass is going to push in this direction. But, most people don't know that around high pressure, the winds go clockwise. Around low pressure, it goes counterclockwise. Well, those spins create vortices. Like when you pull the plug on the bathtub and you see the water going down the drain, that's a vortex. So, polar vortex, it does, the high pressure comes down, and as it's doing so, it's spinning, right? So now people know what a polar vortex is, and we can say it on TV.
I like it. Now, so tell me about, so predicting the weather, first of all, has anyone ever gotten mad at you, like out in public, and been like, you were wrong, and my wedding was ruined? Do you ever get anyone that gets mad?
Yes. And and in the beginning, I didn't handle it very well. First of all, I worked at TV stations prior to this that no one had watched. So it was Channel 51 in Reading. Then I was in Naples, Florida, where kind of a lot of people watched it, but I wasn't a meteorologist at that point. Then I went to Miami. I was part-time on the weekends at WCIX in Miami for 5.5 years, under the promise that you work for me every weekend for a full year, we'll give you a full-time job. And, I was trusting. I was in my 20s on a handshake. 11 months into that deal, that guy gets fired. New guy comes in, says, where's your contract? I'm like, I don't have one. He says, get out of my office. You're part-time on the weekends. So I started thinking about the meteorology thing. So I got my next job in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, kind of back my home area. Weekend weather, 3-day-a-week reporting. And no one watched that station either. It was like the number 4 station. So it wasn't until 2.5 years later that I got up to Providence that my life turned upside down. Because prior to that, I'd do my forecast, I go out, and no one even knew who I was. But then I get to the blowtorch of Channel 10, which has been there, the first one forever, huge ratings, still a legendary station. And within 2 weeks, I was like, oh my God, what's happened to my life? Jay, what's the weather? What's it going to be like tomorrow? It's a fascinating experience, but not always easy to navigate. It was kind of tough. So a friend eventually explained it to me when I would get angry with people just, yelling at me. What it's the only job that be wrong and everything, still keep your job, and I would get mad about it. But a friend finally said, he says, RJ, what they're really telling you is we love you. But that's the only way they know how to say that. Instead of like, we love you, RJ, it's more just, what's the weather? So anytime I hear someone say something like, oh, the way you said it was going to be, all I'm hearing is, we love you, RJ, we love you. And I'm like, hey, thanks for watching. Turn 10.
I like how you change that around. Now, all right, one more weather question. Then I want to get to a couple of movies that you've done, which is really cool. So to predict the weather, first of all, you always hear the term, if you think you know the weather in New England, wait a minute. Is it harder to do the weather in the Northeast than it is out in the plain states, or is that just a misconception?
You know what? You have to go through the same amount of meteorology. So, quick backstory. While I was in Harrisburg, I started going back to school nights and weekends to become a meteorologist, which was tough working full time. But I got the right amount of credits. And by the time I got here at Channel 10, I finished up the credits and got my seal of approval from the American Meteorological Society. For a guy who doesn't like numbers, I learned everything about moist adiabatic lapse rates and thicknesses in the atmosphere. So now I really knew what I was talking about, as opposed to just high pressure, low pressure, cold fronts, and warm fronts. There's more to it than that. There's different layers in the atmosphere and how they all interact. So learning how to read all the information that's out there now, they used to be printed out, and then the internet came along, and so it all migrated to online. But there are volumes of different guidance models you can look at and pour through them to interpret them, and they refine the models, and they've gotten better over the years. So it still takes about, to do it right, like for the 6 o'clock show on Saturdays and Sundays, I come into the station around 3 p.m. I come in at 3 p.m., print out, I'm still old school. I print out the stuff. Some of the newer guys, they just look at the computer, and I'm like, I got to write a red line on there. Got to really know what I'm talking about. But going through all that takes about an hour and a half. And then as the meteorologist on duty, you have to make up all the graphics. You have to, get the pictures in from chime in, from people who are snapping pictures, and you got to title everything. And not only do you have to make the forecast, but then you have to plug it into the computer graphically so that it can make sense to put on your weather show. But getting back to your point, the meteorology has gotten much better than it used to be. And the forecasts are more accurate than they used to be. I mean, we're Channel 10, so, with all the research, they're like, well, the other stations have a 5-day channel, they a 7-day. They're like, well, we're Channel 10, we're doing a 10-day. I'm like, because you can't just put, a sun, a cloud, and a raindrop in 70 on the last 3 days. You have to look at the meteorology that's out there that goes out that far and give your best shot scientifically as to what's going to happen on days 7, 8, 9, and 10. And you know what? They're pretty much on the mark. They might be off by a day or two. The guidance models then may flip and keep a storm 50 miles further to the south, which would make a winter storm just a sunny, gusty day here, but colder, And I think people understand that the further out in the forecast that you go, that there's a margin of error. But the forecasts, they're a lot better. So I don't get many criticism. What does happen is people say, you said it was going to be sunny and 70. I was like, no, I didn't. You were probably watching the Weather Channel or something else. I'm only responsible for my forecast. And I said, if you want, I could show you the 10-day.
Do your friends and family text you for the weather?
They know not to.
Oh, good. All right, let's switch. Well, actually, one more weather question. It seems to me that the seasons have shifted in the last 10, 20 years. It seems to me that I just remember spring used to be warm, summer was hot, fall was cool, and winter was cold. And now it seems like around here, the spring has been like really cold, and that the summer has like extended into November. Is something shifting? What's going on with the weather in the Northeast?
The weather has always been changing since the dawn of time. Did you know that since the Earth first came around, that there have been documented 8 episodes of global warming versus global cooling versus global warming versus global cooling? Not getting into what was the cause of all of it, but in those global cooling periods, there were ice ages. There was a multi-mile sheet of ice that went from the North Pole, I'm pointing north because that's the way north is at my house, that ended at southern New England. It was an ice sheet, okay? Living in an interglacial period like we are now is a pretty nice time to be alive. So the weather is always in flux. It's always changing. And if you look at where we are on the graph, we're currently in what may be the peak of the latest next episode of global warming. I'm not getting into the politics or the debates as to what's causing it or is man responsible for it. But if you just look at the last sine curve, we're still going up from the last valley of an ice age. And there have been 8 other documented cases where that's happened in the past. So we're alive at a pretty good time here right now. Now, getting back to your question, to put that in context, an average lifetime, what's the average life cycle for a human being now? 80 years old, 85, something like
Something
that?
like that.
Right. So people have their own experience in this lifetime to compare what they know the weather is. Oh, the winters used to be snowier, the summers were hotter. But if you really look at that in the big continuum of not just your life would be like one tiny little blip on there. But if you look at it in hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, it's just part of that continuum. So yes, in the 28 years I've been here, we've been through the two snowiest winters on record, 94, 95. Not then, it was not 95, 96, it was 90, 96, 97, 98, I believe. 107 inches of snow, and that was 98. So that was 20 years ago. But it's just like active hurricane seasons. There was that one year where we went through the whole list this year,
right?
But not many of them impacted the continental United States. There was that one year with Wilma and some of the others where just kept nailing Florida time and time again. So there are these big sine curve cycles in weather patterns. So stick around long enough, you'll get a hot summer, you get a beautiful autumn, you'll get a cold, snowy winter, a nice spring, and then a hot summer again. Just stick around long enough. Okay.
All right. By the way, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to R.J Heim from Channel 10 News, but not only does he do the weather and reporting for Channel 10 for the last 27, 28 years, but we have some video we want to show you. We have a trailer, and I'm not sure, Ben, which one it's going to be. We have Planet Worth. So, RJ, let's take a moment to watch the trailer, and then we'll come back and chat.
All right.
A series of escalating tragedies. This is Mama. It's true. Something's happened to Chad. He's not himself.
Oh my God.
This is unbelievable, and it's happening right now. Our source at the State Department is saying that nuclear-tipped intercontinental ballistic missiles have been launched, and they're streaking toward this country as I speak. We do not have this information confirmed, but the president is expecting.
What was that?
We've got to get to the ship.
The time, the not too distant future. A house party. Friends who share a common bond gather together as they always have. In an instant, though, everything changes, and the party, literally, is over.
They all knew this day might come. Hand-picked, they are ready, or so they think. The group of castaways, a Noah's Ark of humanity, lock in their coordinates and travel through time and space to an Earth-like planet with hopes and dreams of a warm reception, an advanced society, a utopia. While that's true for those who pass the series of written, genetic, and biological tests, for those who don't, their world will be bleak. They are sent to a walled-off city in the middle of nowhere, provided the basics, a place to live if they can find it, and work assembling robots. But it's a hostile place. Planet Worth, the holy grail of Earth-like planets that has a dark side. While it doesn't look good for some of the castaways, the Worthians have created a near-perfect society. No war, no crime. And to enhance communication, those dots that denote mood and availability on the bottom and sexual orientation on the top. You can't hide or disguise on Planet Worth. With your contribution, we'll all see what might be waiting for us if we get that far. And maybe, just maybe, it's better out there.
All right, RJ, where did that come from in your mind? How long were you thinking about that? How did tell us about that?
Well, I have a deep well of creativity, if you haven't figured that out, right? And since a little kid, I would make matchbox cities on boards with plywood and trees and mountains and stuff. I always had to create. That's the only way I could make sense of my life and my world, which is how most artists operate. And I learned that along the way. But I started getting the idea of writing 25. Well, I guess I always wanted to write and make movies, but I started actively doing it about 20 years ago. The first one I did, so I've written a whole bunch of things, and what you just saw there was a trailer to try to get funding so I could make the movie. Because I want to make these movies that I've been writing, these episodic series and all that, upon retirement, so I have something else to pour my creative energies into, instead of just thinking that if I pull the plug for me being on TV, that it's going to be a free fall, you know. But Planet Worth came about. I started wondering, you know, I mean, the older you get, the more you live life, the more you experience how crazy life is and how screwed up things are. So I was thinking, well, maybe what if there's a utopian planet out there, just like planet Earth, but maybe where there's no war, there's no crime, there's no racism, it's one government where they figured out everything. And so that's the holy grail of these Earth-like planets, right? So there's planet Surth and Turth and, you know, all that. But just for the sake of the trailer purposes, we call this one Planet Worth. So these people are there, and they've been handpicked to be the Noah's Ark of humanity if anything really goes down the toilet. So, and then you see that nuclear war's breaking out. We got to get to the ship. So this Noah's Ark gets on the ship. They get there, and then they have to pass a series of written genetic and biological tests by the Worthian people to see if they're worthy of being on planet Worth. So what's revealed in the screenplay itself is that, well, even that place has a dark side. Those who don't pass the written genetic and biological tests get sent to a walled-off city in the middle of the desert where they have to make the robots for everybody else. So the climax of the movie comes when those who did pass the tests are given a shot, right? Embedded in that shot is a chip that makes them forget about their other friends on the spaceship that didn't pass the tests. So, and not to give too much away, but the main character is a Native American-esque character, Johnny Moon, and he passes the test, but he hates internet technology. So they're like, "You're the perfect guy to help us design the next set of robots." So he asked to be taken to the place where they make these robots, and he's walking the catwalk, the transom, and some of the others are like, that's Johnny Moon. So they're trying to get his attention. And he, I don't know who you are, you know? So he just keeps walking. He goes home that night. He's living in an A-frame out in the mountains. They gave him a place to live in a little Jetson spacecraft. And it's chilly outside, so he wants to get some firewood so he can bring it inside, light a fire in the fireplace. And while he's out there getting some firewood, one of these little creatures from the woods comes up and starts tangling with him. And he's wrestling with it, and it takes a chunk out of his arm. When it does, it takes the chip out too. And all of a sudden, it all comes flooding back. Those were my friends in there. So the climax of the movie is him trying to get them out. And then what are they going to do? All right, they want to escape. Well, they all get caught. They brought before the Worthian Council, and they say, look, we gave you everything. We gave you jobs, even those of you that didn't pass the tests. We gave you everything, but you can't play by the rules, so you're going to have to go. And there's one place left, and you can see the spaceship in the end. Where are they going? They're going to planet Earth. The whole time you think they came from Earth, but it was another one of these Earth-like planets.
Wow. You've got a creative mind. You did that. You did a one called What a Pill. And what's the one you're working on? The Life I Lost. It's an episodic series.
Right. Episodic series, The Life I Lost. I got the idea for that. I've always had a sense that many of us, if not all of us, live multiple lifetimes until we get it right, or, you know, and then we transcend to another plane of existence. Sometimes we have to come back for multiple lifetimes. And then I started doing research on it. And it turns out that little kids, before their current lifetime is impressed upon them, there's been documented evidence where they're splurging out. I was a little boy in West Virginia, and I drowned. You know, documented cases. A little boy in San Francisco was fascinated with airplanes from World War II, and his parents didn't expose him to anything that could have, you know, contaminated his current brain with that. And he named who he was in the past lifetime. And they researched it, and there was a guy by that name. You know? So
wow.
I did more research, and I figured the premise for this series could be endless, of people realizing in a current lifetime, either through a dream or hypnosis or some other kind of trigger, that they had lived a lifetime before. So each episode, and I've written 4 already. I have the ideas for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. But it takes a year just to write the first draft while I'm working full time. It's endless, right? Of the ideas you can come up with. So each episode starts off in current time with the person realizing that they had lived a lifetime before. And then the bulk of each episode is a flashback as to what that lifetime was. That was a lifetime interrupted just by circumstance, where they still maybe carry a little bit of the phobias of height, you know, water, based on how they lost their life in the past lifetime. And then it's bookends with present day.
And now each one of these episodes would be a completely different cast in every episode.
Right. Kind of like the Twilight Zone is, right? The old Twilight Zone episodes. And what's great about that is they don't have to play in sequence. And what I often didn't like about episodic series was if you miss the first couple of episodes, you're jumping in the middle and you're lost and you might not stick with the show. Or you don't like one of the characters and you're like, I'm not coming back to that series. I don't like that character, you know. But this way, it's the story of people who had lived a lifetime before that realize it today. And the characters, it's limitless. It's endless what you can do.
I love it.
With the story ideas. So to get the story ideas, I just kind of open myself up to the cosmos, you know, and say, all right, what do you want me to work on now? And so then I have a legal pad, and if I catch an idea, it's like I have to prep myself to say, okay, I'm ready to want to do the next one. And then it kind of I just feel it, which one is the one I'm going to write. And then I kind of sketch out a 1-page as to what's going to happen, who the character is or characters are, and what was their past lifetime. And then I work on I research, you know, what it would be like in, you know, 1783 for 2 Native American brothers who one of them dies in a buffalo jump. A buffalo jump is a stampede where the Native Americans back in the day would corral a bunch of buffalo and run them off a cliff.
Wow.
And then at the bottom is where that they would, for weeks on end, cut the skins off, cure the meat, and they'd have enough for, you know, the upcoming winter. So I came across that, and I was like, okay, the 2 brothers are striking out on their own. They're like late teens or early 20s. They were told that they were going to be shown how to do it, but they wanted to try it themselves. So one of them gets caught up in it, and his brother is telling him, no, get out. And he goes off too. And so they're still brothers in this current lifetime, they both had the same dreams about riding the horses and trying to corral the buffalo. But once the framework for these stories are set up, it's almost like I'm just tapping into what's been created there, and I'm just reporting on what's happening.
That's a great way to look at it.
Which is where my reporting skills come in handy.
Right. Now, listen, we have actually been doing this. We've been on the air already for 40 minutes, so I'm not going to take too much more of your time. But I wanted to say that you're one of the easiest interviews I've ever had because you're used to being the person interviewing someone. I want you to give me the worst story you've got about going to interview someone to get a story and they just wouldn't want to say anything. Do you have that happen a lot, or are people just blab all the time?
No, what happens is I don't like to do pre-interviews. I try to make the person feel comfortable. Oftentimes I'm a one-man band as a reporter. So I get out there and I got to set up the camera and, make sure the mics are working and then frame the shot. So all the time I'm talking to them. I don't want to talk to them about what the story is because invariably they'll say all the good stuff before the camera is recording. And then if they do start answering, they'll say, again, like I said before. And then I'm like, oh, I can't use that soundbite unless I have to, double my edit time. What's happened often is people are very glib and very comfortable, just the chit chat. Oh, RJ, we've been watching, we love Channel 10. I'm like, did you see any good movies? Because I don't want them to talk about the story we're talking about. What's happened a number of times, not often, is as soon as I start rolling the camera, they'll give me like half-word sentences, half like, yes. So I try not to ask yes/no questions.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, sometimes you can usually get what you need in about 10 minutes of an interview. And it's usually the end of the interview because you're like, all right, anything else you want to add? That's the answer to that. Anything else you want to add question is usually what gets in the story. Because
Really?
They figured, all right, I've done all the hard work already. He's not going to use this part. And then they give me the nugget. Then they're like, it was the most incredible experience I ever had. And I'm like, yay, yay. You said it.
That's when I was doing, I've done a couple documentaries and you got the person sitting there and of course it's longer form. And I always try to say to them, repeat the sentence back to me in your answer. Cause I'll say, so what year did you start doing, XYZ? And they'll just go 1972.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, no. In 1972, but anyway,
you have to ask them. You have to ask them questions that will elicit a paragraph. Like, what did you feel about that? What went through your mind the first time? Fill in the blank.
Right. No, that's amazing. All right. So listen, before we leave, I just want to circle back one more time and give a plug because you want people to go right now when they get off listening to us here and go right to your channel. Can you tell, by the way, how many people are listening at any given time?
No, I can't. Can I or can you? How many people
No,
are watching this thing right now?
On your radio station.
Yes.
Oh, good, good. So we're gonna tell people to go. Oh, look! So the Temptations' "Papa Was a Rolling Stone" is playing right now. So we got it up on the screen there, but you can go to the website.
Go to musicthroughthetunneloftime.com.
We have it up on the screen right below here, musicthroughthetunneloftime.com. If you're watching right now, you can click on it.
If people can't remember that, I have a link from rjheim.com. All right.
That could be easy.
Because a lot of people don't know how to spell through.
Right, that's true.
and it's a long URL too. So musicthroughthetunneloftime.com. It's 24/7. It's all genres. It's all eras, and it's a pat on the back. It's a bow to top 40 radio that many of us older folks have grown up with. It's got reverb and jingles. If you go to the Music Through the Tunnel of Time page and you scroll down, some of the jingles are on there that you can just hear by themselves. But it's commercial free right now. It's the long-term plan is to build a good-sized audience, and then maybe years in advance, when I retire, I can squeeze in like a 30-second commercial every hour or something, which will just be enough to cover costs. Because right now I'm writing it off. I'm paying all the licensing rights and fees, and the web hosting and all that. For a guy like me, it's a couple grand a year, and it's my gift of institutional knowledge of music to everybody else to enjoy.
Well, we love it, and we hope that everybody that's watching tonight tunes in. And one of the pages we're live on is our Misquamicut Beach page. So when you guys come to the beach this summer, we're going to have to remind them. But when you're sitting on the beach, you got your phone, you can listen to RJ's channel and get your suntan this summer too. So anyway,
and once in a while I'll go live. But there's also this is really, because web radio stations, it's tied to a desktop, right? But now with the phones that have Bluetooth, you can tie them to one of these. This is not a commercial, but this is how I listen to the station on the go. It's a JBL Flip 4. The Flip 5s are out now. Press this little button, ties directly to the Bluetooth on your phone, and the sound is amazing. People will ask you to turn it down. You can walk through a neighborhood, and people will be like, "Can you turn that down, please?" I'm like, "It's my radio station." I'm trying to hear how it sounds so I can make it sound better for all the listeners who are going to tune in. But, so it's a way to get the radio station on the go. They're making cars now that have all that accessible, like Wi-Fi in the car, so you'll be able to just bookmark the page and just listen to it all the time. So that's what's on the horizon. So I'm getting it at the ground floor, doing it right, and hopefully it'll be another creative outlet to have on the horizon.
Awesome. Well, listen, R.J. Heim, NBC Channel 10, thank you so much for taking time tonight and talking to us, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Caswell. Thank you, everybody. I love Channel 10. I'll be there for a couple more years, okay? Just signed a new contract. So.
Good. We'll see you later, RJ.
I'll see you down at the beach, too, Caswell.
Yes, you will. I'm here right whenever you need us.
Great.
All right. Thanks, RJ. And
Bye.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching us tonight. It's been great to have RJ Heim on as our guest. A lot more that I didn't know about RJ, obviously from Channel 10. But when he sent me the radio station, it was actually on New Year's Day, and I tuned in. I thought it was great. I listened to it again in my office. I was just listening to it today. So I really recommend that you check out his station and check out his website, rjheim.com, because you can watch those trailers for What a Pill and Planet Worth, and check out all the other stuff that he's done. So go to rjheim.com and check him out. Anyway, thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you on the Caswell Cooke Show next time. And thanks, Ben, for being our producer.